A very good afternoon to our viewers and welcome to the 1873 TV, your vision, your power. My name is Tinashe Mpasiri. This afternoon on the 1873 TV, we bring you yet another insightful and informative show. Shabhani Mashaba Minds SMM Part 15, a special, and that is the Kangaroo Inquiry. And last Friday, we're also looking at the same inquiry, this kangaroo inquiry, which was basically an inquiry which was set up by the administrator of Shabhani Mashaba Mines in order to understand, in order for us to understand some of the issues and also the facts behind and circumstances behind Shabhani Mashaba Mines. We'll be looking at a transcript based on this inquiry. So we left off at page 6 and we'll be starting off from page 7. So this afternoon on the discussion, I'm joined by Mr. Mutungwa Mawere. Mr. Mawere, a very good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon.
And to those viewers who also want to partake in the conversation or the discussion, you're very much welcome to do so through our social media platforms. One of the platforms that you can make use of is the 1873 TV Facebook page where we are streaming live. And just below the comments, you can be able to post your questions, your comments, or even your remarks pertaining to the show, or simply connect with us via Skype. And the Skype ID to connect with us is the 1873 TV. Some of the information that we have had on this program is also available on the FOSMM website, which is www.fosmm.org. There you can find some of the documents as well as some of the links to the podcast and programs we have heard on Shabhani Mashaba Mines. So, Mr. Mawere, we can actually carry on from where we left off. And on page 7, the first individual who was raising a question was Manikai. And this was to Mr. Peter Moyo.
Yeah.
So, it states that, what about the other officials? Were they not influenced by Mr. Mawere? This is Manikai posing a question to Peter Moyo. We had agreed in former meetings that any executive who would have followed whatever he had said would be accountable for his actions.
Mm-hmm.
Manikai, what bearing would his interventions have, Moyo? His interventions would influence and they had a bearing. Would you say he was a hands-off chairman of the holding company? A number of us became suspicious. He would give a verbal instruction and never sign any paper anyway. We became very cautious in dealing with him. What sort of instructions were they? Were they of policy nature, operation nature, or both? They were both. Operations of AAM, the evidence before the administrator is that there was between 1996 and 2002 an agency agreement between the mines and SAS. Can you comment? Mr. Moe, the marketing side was not open to head office. That agency agreement, I saw it for the first time in 2004. The buying agreement subsequently came...
But you can see that the agent's agreement expired in 2002, and Mr. Moyo is saying, I saw it for the first time in 2004, and 2 years after the expiry.
And he's the company secretary.
Then he says the buying agreement subsequently came to my attention in the earlier part of 2004. But he has been asked that the evidence before the administrator is that there was between and in fact there was something, as a matter of fact, an agreement.
Yes.
Can you comment? And he has no knowledge of it because when it was concluded, when it was concluded, he was no longer. He had not joined SMM. He joined SMM in 1998. So he had no personal knowledge of this. Yet he's giving evidence
about something
under oath.
something that he has
He had no knowledge
knowledge
of.
of.
And he's being asked by people who knew and ought to have known that he had no knowledge. So Manikai says, as the corporate secretary, were you not aware of the arrangements? Let's call them contractual, which were at the heartbeat of the company. Again, he was the secretary of SMM. And as the secretary of SMM, he would only record things that came before him. The things that were not before the board, if an agreement is signed and ratified by the board, it won't be part of submission to a new board. So there's nothing to do with the heartbeat of this agreement. So there is no relationship at all. And yet what you find here is actually a misdirection of evidence. Then we go on. Then Mr. Moyo answers. Yeah, you can scroll down. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it then comes, no, neither way they brought before the board anything that is concluded outside your understanding. There's no point in revisiting it. Even though I was a corporate secretary, I was kept unaware of some legal documents. He doesn't say by who. Who was he working with? And whether he didn't know that there were exports that were being held in a certain manner. Could you clarify on the way Mr. Mawere was giving instructions? Everything is focusing on Mr. Mawere.
Mr. Mawere.
Does he sometimes attend the board meetings? Mr. Mawere, no. As far as I remember, Mr. Mawere never gave or issued his instructions in a board meeting. So I was never part of the board meeting. But would talk directly to officials.
How would you know the discussion that you would have with another official if there had been any conversation with any official?
And more important, yeah, I think more importantly, he's also saying that there were no instructions given in the board. But the officials are not the board. If officials are not the board, then who is it that was on the board? So again, you find these officials and board, the control and administration of a company is vested in the board.
Yes.
Then you veer out of the board, you are now in the terrain of officials without an address of where and how these instructions were given. And how did they speak to the board? If the board meeting took place, resolutions were adopted and implemented, how then do you construct this new reality? Can you confirm that the buying agreement was not brought before the board of SMM? The buying agreement is not between SMM and the buyer.
It's between the agent and the buyer.
It's between AA Mines
Okay.
as exporter, African Associated Mines as exporter, not SMM. You see? So the agreement will be the parties that can cause exports to take place, not between a third party.
And Mr. Moyo was not part of AA Mines.
He was not part of AA Mines.
He was only corporate secretary.
But he's
for
being
SMM.
asked now about matters that fall within, outside the scope of his day-to-day involvement, without calling the actual party that was involved. I think we go to the next page. Okay. Let's see.
Okay.
That buying agreement was signed on behalf of AA Mine by Mr. Dube. Was it was it in his powers? No. AA Mines board was a functional board, and it would not pass.
It will not pass such a resolution.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a resolution had to be sanctioned by the SMM board, but it wasn't. And Manikai goes on to state, did you subsequently, as the custodian of the legal agreements, become aware of it? What did you do when you became aware?
I became aware of it in 2004. I advised Mr. Munyati and Mr. Dube that these documents had to go before the SMM board, but it was already too late. This is a private company whose board members are appointed by a shareholder.
Yes.
But he is talking as if this is a parastatal, that there was no authority. Yes, I agree that the controlling shareholder is Mawe, but the inquiry is about limiting or purporting to limit the power of a shareholder by people who are not shareholders of the company. Then he says the buying agreement was never ratified by the SMM board. Mr. Moyo says no. What was the nature of the arrangement between SMM
between SMM, AAM, and SAS from an operational point of view?
Yeah.
Would you have become aware of the relationship? May you describe it? You couldn't call it a relationship as such. From a legal point of view, it was said that SAS and AAM relationship was an agency relationship. The arrangements that were being reported to the board were that of the agency? Yes. Did you become aware of how they were functioning? Not in greater detail. The marketing department was kept away from my office. I am not talking about marketing. How was the arrangement being implemented? I do not really know. What was the structure of SAS regarding its relationship with SMM? Mr. Moyo, from my secretarial side, SAS didn't feature on SMM at all. Sibanda asking, discussing the relationship between SAS and SMM, would you describe SAS as a division of SMM? Moyo, officially, it did not feature at all as a division of SMM. Manikai, how then would employees of SMM work at SAS? Mr. Moyo, there was an SAS office at the AA Mines Bulawayo office. Its employees were paid from SMM, but they were not employed by SMM. It follows, I believe, that SMM recovered amounts paid to SAS employees as salaries from SAS. The quantum owing to SMM for these salaries can only be known by our finance department. Manikai, Was there an intercompany relationship? I really do not know how the salaries were being treated. At some point, John Mukushi left. When was that, and what structure followed? He left in 2002. He had already said that to those who were close to him 6 months prior to his departure. He said that the reason for his departure was the intrusion into the management and operational issues of SMM by Mr. Mawere. He gave example of the investment in FSI Agricom, which the SMM board had not been told about. We had all agreed that we did not have the capacity to go into agriculture since we had no expertise. Neither did we have the finance to do so. So John Mukushi left because Mr. Mawere was making decisions without approval. Broadly, yes. What structure followed his departure? Dr. Mudekunye became the chairman of SMM and chief executive officer of ARL. The other structures remained in place. Was Dr. Mudekunye also chairman of Zimre? Were you aware of his role in Zimre? He was chairman of Zimre, UKI, and Finwood. Sibanda, did Dr. Mudekunye become the chairman of Zimre before or after John Mukushi had left? He was on the board before John Mukushi left. SMM was an additional portfolio to him. Manikai, what was Dr. Mudekunye's relationship with Mr. Mawere? They were cousins. What would you say was the effect of this new development within the group in terms of corporate governance? John Mukushi's strength was to keep Mr. Mawere in South Africa and make sure that when he came, he was guided. After John left, we didn't have the strength. Mawere's face became more visible. Was the strength that John Mukushi had not replaced by Dr. Mudekunye? No, they were different. How did Dr. Mudekunye become a weakness? One could say from his personal characteristics, John was more experienced as compared to Dr. Mudekunye. Dr. Mudekunye did not fall in that same category. You said Mr. Mawere became more visible. How and where? Many times in Zimbabwe, we became aware of a lot of changes he instigated which began taking place in 2002 and the beginning of 2003, such as the companies that had been formed. For instance, he would look at the expenditure and say that we are traveling a lot, therefore let's form a travel agency company. He also said that we no longer wanted to pay money to Dube, Manikai and Wacha law firm, so he formed a law firm, Manditranga Legal Practitioners. He also formed an auditing company, Regatta Financial Services Private Limited. He would also say we are recruiting a lot of staff, so let's form a recruiting company. That's how the company Best Practices was formed. All these new companies or organizations were all drawing funds from SMM. Through what structures was he saying this? Together with Hilary Mnyati and Dr. Mudekunye, we would sit down and look at the information and put it together, then took it to the board. So it became common knowledge that Mr. Mawere was driving all these investments. Yes. Was he taking ownership of this? No, he wouldn't take ownership. He would say, take this, and if it fails, someone else would be accountable. But all the new companies were SMM subsidiaries. How were they financed? Through SMM. What impact did these decisions have on the main business of SMM? There were operational and cash flow problems. The mines were in a critical condition because of these ventures. It led to strained relationships between head office and the mines amongst the executives. The executives at the mines did not appreciate the directives were coming from Mr. Mawere.
That directives were
coming from Mr. Mawere. Was the negative impact visible to the executives? Yes. Were all these investments accounted for in the records of the company. Initially, they were up to the end of 2003, and then they were consolidated under Regatta Financial Holdings Limited and became its subsidiaries. The law firm died a natural death. Who owned Regatta Financial Holdings Limited, SMM? Who was driving the negotiations on these various acquisitions? These were done from Hilary Munyati's office and the financial director's office. My involvement was in drafting the agreements after receiving instructions from Mr. Munyati's office. Mr. Mawere would originate the idea and leave the executives to implement. Did you have SMM resolutions ahead of these acquisitions? We never got any resolutions at the beginning of any acquisition. Were they ratified? We took all the investments to the board, and the board noted them. We did not seek ratification. Why? As a board, we were told how the investments had come about, and there was no way the board would throw them away since they were done deals by then. Done by who? By Mr. Mawere. All the investments did not have the basic checks like due diligence reports, etc. With the exception of Seno and Midsec, there were no checks or due diligence in respect of other companies. John Mkushi threw in the towel. Yes. Would you say the investments were recklessly undertaken by Mr. Mawere? The executives would have gone into those investments, would not have gone into those investments. Did they make their position clear to Mr. Mawere in trying to protect themselves? A number, in trying to protect themselves, did express their concern to Mr. Mawere, especially on the impact on the mines. For example, Mr. Munyati, but there was no one there to listen. Were these investments conducted with any degree of prudence? Some degree of prudence was put in after the decisions had already been made. Prudence is before and not after. I think initially the executives would not have. It was therefore not prudent. In your opinion, did these investments add value to SMM? With the exception of Seno, the rest of the investments never added value to SMM. There was no synergy between SMM and those investments. The other investments involved Schweppes and CFI. In your opinion, does this form part of the same collection of these Mawere initiatives? Yes. On the CFI transaction, I became aware of it when there was a problem with the former chief executive officer of CFI. When he was about to be fired, I realized that money had been paid to buy CFI shares. I was then asked to get statutory records of the company's holding the shares in CFI and Ivan Johnson. After the deal? Yes. So you were not involved as the SMM board in the origination and implementation of this investment? No, we were informed afterwards. So there was no analysis of its fitness and whether or not the group could undertake it? No. Let's discuss the departure of Mr. Munyati. When was it? In May 2004. I started seeing problems in 2003 when Hilary joined SMM. I told him that he was not going to last for 3 years. I told him that whatever he would do, he was to be aware that he would be asked to go. In 2003, there were a number of meetings that were called by Mr. Mawere at Sheraton Hotel in Harare and in South Africa. Chief executive officers of the companies were called to those meetings, and we called these meetings rallies. Ultimately, Mr. Mawere said that he wanted to move all Zimbabwean operations to South Africa. He was talking about Pan-Africanism. Hillary asked how this was to be funded, and this was the beginning of his divorce. In what capacity was Mr. Mawere calling these meetings? He just called them at any time, and that is when we started asking questions. For instance, he had just been elected into ZANU-PF structures for the Masvingo province, but he publicly declined. I asked him why there was a breakdown between him and the politicians. I also asked him why there was a strain of relations between him and his former good friend, Mr. Manikai. I asked him whether I could help him, but he just wouldn't give any answers. So all these developments and problems culminated in operational difficulties at the mines. May you describe and explain what was going on? On 18th December 2003, a monetary policy statement from the governor of the Reserve Bank found SMM grossly overborrowed. We had ceded our shares in the quoted companies. The majority of the borrowing was for FSI, Agricom, and other investments. There was a rally called for January, which I did not attend as Mr. Mawere had become too personal. Mr. Mawere would attack executives in public. The constraint was manifested at the mines. For instance, in January 2004, we could not pay salaries, electricity, or buy spares at the mines. In February to March, it became serious. The Minister of Mines began asking questions. Obed Dube and Samanga came up with a turnaround program for the mines to be given to the Minister of Mines. We started going to the Reserve Bank and other banks, and the situation became critical. What other initiatives did management take, if any? The head office management was reluctant to take any initiatives, as the relationship between the shareholder and management, particularly the head office, was strained. Any initiative could be shot down by Mr. Mawere. As a result of his pan-Africanist approach, the mines were taken out of the head office, and Obed Dube would call himself the group managing director, and he had been promised a job in the Pan-African structures. Mr. Mawere wanted the mines to be separate entities. The whole atmosphere inhibited the head office management from taking any initiatives. You have said that the head office was taken away from the mines. Did Mr. Mawere indicate what he wanted to do with the structures at the head office? He wanted it to go. He called Chipato to the South Africa and also told him that he was the new CEO. He gave names of people that he wanted to be fired, and this included Bima and Savala. So these instructions were coming from Mr. Mawere and not the chairman of SMM. Yes. Mr. Munyati left in 2004. On 13 May 2004, we asked for a meeting with the chairman to ask him what the strategy was for the head office. We asked him to be open with us, and that's when he said that Mr. Munyati was going and Chipato was coming in. After the meeting, he asked for an amicable divorce. At 11:30 in the evening, Mr. Mawere called me, trying to build bridges. I told him that his interference was wrong and that we should leave management alone. I actually told him to go and build a mansion in Hawaii. I told him that the management and the directors were loyal, hardworking, and committed. So Mr. Munyati left. What were the new structures? Chipato came in as Chief Executive Officer of SMM. The chairman was Dr. Mudekunye. The rest of the board remained, and there was the addition of Mr. Chihambakwe as deputy chairman. Mr. Bosch, he came in July 2004 when Dr. Mudekunye had left. That's when the issue of the session agreement came on. Chipato came when the issues were just starting to come out. Hillary left in May? Yes. The session agreement had started to move more or less at the same time. Yes. Was the session agreement brought before the board of SMM? No. Were the matters relating to liabilities of SMM to Peta Trading brought before the board? No. Did the board become aware at that time? No. Mr. Bosch came in about July. Yes. When the board got to know about the session agreement, what did it do about it? We advised the board to report the matter to the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe and to the local police as fraud. We also advised it to make arrangements for the agreement to be rescinded. It was later rescinded in South Africa by the administrator. On the South African structure, obviously by 2004, we were aware of the structure in South Africa. Were you involved in the South African side at all as the corporate secretary? No, I just became aware of it. Did you become aware of the problems of non-remittance? Yes, when the session agreement came up, we knew that SAS was not remitting. We knew the problem and its cause. What was the cause of non-remittance? There were no remittances coming from SAS. Even the board pointed out on the impact of non-remittance. Money was being withheld illegally by SAS. Was it significant? Very much so on the minds. Did the board know that SAS had received a lot more than what was being remitted? Receipt was confirmed by SAS, but not to the mines. The picture came clearer when the session agreement was concluded. It became clear that funds were being paid but not remitted. You have been a very key member of the administrator's team in looking at the legal issues in Zimbabwe, South Africa, Zambia, and the UK. You were involved in the rescission and attachment issue as well as the liquidation of SAS. What in your analysis led to the reconstruction of SMM, the liquidation of SAS? In summary, the negative financial position of SMM, it could be evidenced by audited accounts of 2004. This was untenable. The impact to the country, I think a third of Zimbabwe could have been left in serious problems. The mines, the Midlands as well as southern Matabeleland areas were affected. The livelihood of 6,000 employees was affected as well. From a national standpoint, the reconstruction had to be done. The government would have gone grossly irresponsible in letting the situation go as it was. Who do you hold responsible for the collapse of SMM? Mr. Mawere personally. Any cronies that you worked with? Dr. Mudekunye actually apologized to me before he left that he had not listened to my advice. He said that he had been used but had to account for his actions. What do you mean by that he had to account for his actions? He took part in the session agreement and tried to cover up for the non-remittance by SAS. And the liquidation of SAS, it had to be done as a process of trying to recover the funds. It was justified. We also had to have paper trail of where the funds went. Liquidation was a justified action. Looking at the role of SAS marketing, it had a small balance sheet. If it owed the money we are talking about, would you say SAS was insolvent? Yes. Do you have any other comments? It is common knowledge with SMM that administration was due and was justified. It came at the right time. I am grateful to the administrator who was appointed. I believe that no other administrator in Zimbabwe could have done better in light of the complications of financial transactions in SMM. Why? I have already said it before. I acknowledge the assistance that the administrator has received from you, Mr. Moyo. You have managed to unleash your memory properly and fairly in that you have assisted the administrator in getting where he is today. Thank you, Mr. Moyo. You have been very professional. I hope that the administrator would recognize your assistance for a job well done. Apart from participation in the session agreement, what other negative things did Dr. Mudekunye do? He was a likable person. He would not undertake any action on his own without consulting the other board members, except for the session agreement. Thank you, Mr. Moyo, for coming. You will hear from this commission in due course. Thank you. A certified true and correct record of the proceedings by the witness and the commissioner, signed at Harare, this 27th day of July 2006. Peter Chimbwa Chikowero Moyo as witness. And signed at the Harare, 27th day of July 2006, Notary Public. Also Wesley Simba Sibanda, the commissioner.
Yeah.
And this actually is the end of this transcript that we have been looking at. So maybe Mr. Mawere, as we draw towards the end of today's show, what is it that you can say pertaining to this whole transcript and what we have come to also go through today?
I think what you see is what you get. You see here a shareholder being effectively put on trial by people who have hijacked the company. No company secretary would be able even to hold a shareholder in this low esteem. What is the company secretary's job? Effectively, the company secretary would have brought the directors of the company, who would then be accountable. But this company secretary goes beyond a company secretary. He is actually the company. He is making representation on behalf of the company. He is purporting to be the alter ego of the company. Instead, he is pointing a finger at the shareholder. That actually the shareholder was a persona non grata. And the assets that are in question, they didn't just come from heaven. The investment that he's talking about were not investments that were created out of his own creation. So this is the personalization, even the word crony. I mean, can you imagine that a shareholder and the people who work for the company, the relationship with will be that of a principal and crony. It just goes a long way towards giving the context in which misgovernance can take place and actually the corrosion of the rule of law. Because nowhere else would we have this kind of purported commission of inquiry taking place where a person who is accused is not even given an opportunity to present his own case. And no documents are used here. No resolution, nothing. This is hearsay. Even more himself doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's given an audience by people who are not even authorized. And you have Marikai, who, according to Moyo, was known to me. And yet he was the one interrogating. How can an interested party be now involved in the inquiry on facts about a person that is now acknowledged to have a problem with him? So that is all I can say in the time that we have.
Well, viewers, this actually brings us to the end of our program, and the main purpose of this program is to enable us as individuals to be able to build communities and also to build institutions that can best serve us. It is through such engagements we can have a better understanding of how we can be able to build communities. And if you are wondering how you can become a member of the 1873 Network, which is a member-based association of forward-leaning individuals who believe that the connected individual, the equipped individual, has got a better chance to opportunities in life, to inspire new thinking, new outcomes, and new possibilities. All you have to do is just go to our website, which is www.the1873network.org. You can sign up for membership on the website, which is absolutely free to do so. You can also download the forms for your membership subscription, which you can fill in, and you send them through to info@the1873network.org. And you just select the membership level, subscription level that best suits you. The 1873 TV is an initiative of the 1873 Network, a platform for raising awareness and improving literacy on issues that matter. Thank you so much for joining us and for making the 1873 TV your channel of choice. Mr. Mawere, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Please stay logged on the 1873 TV, as we'll be bringing you shortly the 1873 Mentees, a circle, a framework to mentorship. Goodbye for now.